Hey y'all, ankle me this, Batman. I'm Farley with Writer's Edge Podcast, and today let's have a conversation about the ankle and writing. So, ankle me this, Batman. How much have you thought about your ankle and writing? Probably not so much about your ankle, but you have thought about your heels because you've probably, over the course of many years, been told to get your heels down, ride with your heels down, push your heel down, different versions to get you to try to elongate and keep weight in your stirrups. Or conversely, if you are in the rope pen, you may have been told to put your toes down and to stand up that way. So, while you may not have thought about your ankle per se, you have been thinking about your heels. So, it all goes together. So, our ankles do essentially four motions. They go up and down when they come up with their toes up. So if you're pulling your toes up towards you, that's called dorsiflexion. If you are pointing your toes down, that's called plantar flexion. Our ankles also move side to side. When you turn your ankle in, it's called inversion. When you turn your ankle out, it's called eversion. The most common place for ankle sprains and rolling your ankle is inversion when it gets rolled in. So, just another tidbit. But so we have plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, pointing the toes down and coming back up, right? Inversion and eversion, which are two side-to-side motions, don't happen by themselves. Inversion, where that foot comes in, rolls in, happens with plantar flexion, with the toes pointed down. And eversion, where the foot goes out, happens with dorsiflexion. So imagine as you're going out to the side laterally, your toes are coming up some. And that's important to recognize, as we will see in just a minute. So, correct writing kind of deems that we are the stirrups on the ball of our foot and our heels are pointed down without pushing down through the stirrup. So if you push really hard down through the balls of your feet, then it's really hard to get your heels down, right? So, you've worked on any number of things, including, visionary things from centered writing with Sally Swift on elongating through the leg, allowing that long kind of slinky tube going through your legs and elongating down the rib cage of the horse. But it's not enough just to have your heels down. Proper writing dictates that your heels are down and you are slightly everted. So your heels are down, which makes your toes come up, and you're turned out slightly. This allows the alignment of the leg to be proper. This is very easy to see if you're a visual person in pictures of English writers because of the attire and everything. The lines are a lot cleaner often than in the Western disciplines. So your heels are down, slightly everted. That allows for greater contact through your knees and your adductors, and it allows to keep everything a little more in line. I say that because it can be confused because I struggled with this with my writing for a while. as I got off riding by myself. And as I've told you several times before, the body will always find the easiest way to get something done, right? However, it can accomplish the task with the least amount of energy used, it's on it. So don't confuse dorsiflexion and eversion with heels down and your leg rotated out. So when that happens, and it's just a slight rotation, you still have contact with the saddle. However, you are using more of your medial hamstrings, your inner hamstrings. So less groin muscles, less adductors are used, and more of your hamstrings are used to ride with. And you're like, well, Farrells, so what? Well, if you are pleasure riding or trail riding, yeah, I'll agree with you. So what? You still get the job done. No real harm, no foul in whatever's going on. However, if you are trying to compete, whether it is in the horsemanship arena, whether it is running barrels or roping, that's a big so what that can cost you tenths of a second in the timed events, points on a judge's card in the judged events, and, may be what is holding you back from getting to the next level. Because when your leg is rotated out versus your ankle being rotated out, you are not maximizing the use of your riding muscles. So in the timed events, it may lead you to getting behind your horse as you're coming out of a barrel. It may, and it can be super slight, because you can say, Farrells, I'm not bouncing on the back of my saddle. I'm not pulling on the reins. I'm really grabbing hold of that horn and pulling myself out of there. And that is all great. I can promise you, because I have been there. But as we know better, we do better. As everything is getting tougher all the time, every little bit of advantage helps, right? So if you are riding with the leg rotated out versus your ankle and you are at a disadvantage, you're not maximizing the use of your legs, your groin muscles are not allowed to tighten and come around with your horse as you're turning, whether you're turning a barrel, whether you're cutting a cow, whether you're bending through a pole, you're not maximizing that. And when you don't maximize the use of those muscles, you are not able to maximize the use of the kinetic chain all the way up through the core. That leaves you behind. That leaves your horse wondering where your center of mass is going to go, and will often find them compensating to get back under you. Remember, we've talked about this. Horses want to please us, and they want us, once they figure out that we're going to stay on, they want us to stay on, and they want to help stay underneath us. So there can be a big reason why you may be falling behind. In the judged arena, that may look like extra movement through your upper body. It may also look at extra movement through the leg, particularly in some of the judged events where you should not move one bit. Yes, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not really. It can cost you points on your judge's card, quite simply. It can also cost you it can cost you lots of lunch line lessons with your trainer, or just beating your head against the wall on why you are not hitting that next level. And that may be it, because details matter. A simple little change can change how the whole kinetic chain is working, which in turn can affect much bigger things. So, does that make sense? So another thing that can happen is getting your toes down. And you see this probably a lot more in the roping arena, where people plantar flex and point their toes down. They kind of rotate at the leg, and it'll lock you in there. Like, it's a pretty secure place to be, actually. And the reason being is that, particularly if you are not very strong in the core, if you are new to riding or anything, it lets you cheat, and it lets you cheat really, really well. And you can lock in there, and it will allow you to take that hit coming out of the box. It will allow you to take that hit going down the alley as the horse accelerates. And that and your saddle horn can make you feel very secure, which is great. And particularly in the rope pen, this whole heels down versus toes down, I'm going to say, in my opinion, there's no correct way on that. But I'm going to explain to you the differences in what happens through the roper's body. Because I know very successful ropers who ride different ways. I've sat years and years at the timed event watching different elite ropers and seeing where their foot position is in their different events and what they tend to do. I've sat in the rope pen and watched it. And so we're going to talk about the differences in that, and then that way you can take that education and apply it to your rope program, whichever way that may be. So, because I learned to rope with my toes down and kind of point straight out the ground, maybe rotated out a little bit, or maybe just a little more, just stronger plantar flexion. So when that happens, it changes the kinetic chain that your body uses. It also changes your center of gravity. And by kinetic chain, I mean the group of muscles that get recruited to do a task. So having your toes down, that really puts you onto your anterior kinetic chain, the front of your body. So, and it allows your center of gravity to be a little more forward, which honestly in the rope pen sometimes you need, right? Because your whole thing is you've got to take that hit out of the box, and then you've got to stand up to throw your rope. So you're fighting against a lot of forces to get up in front of those forces to get your job done. However, not recruiting your glute muscles. We've talked about that, the glute muscles before, and how they kind of get turned off. Not really using your extensor muscles through your back can put your core at a little bit of a disadvantage, possibly. It can shorten the distance between your shoulder and your pelvis if you are there and leaning forward. So if you're really getting your shoulders over your hips, which may be affecting your swing, may be affecting your accuracy. Because if you talk about using that chain correctly and you relate it to baseball, which is not exactly the same as roping, but really the closest thing we have, power comes from your hips. Pitchers, pitching coaches, everybody really works on core strength, hip control, along with your shoulder. And that'll be a discussion for another day as we dive deeper into the shoulder and roping. However, if you are a roper who keeps your heels down and kind of continues to keep what we consider proper alignment for riding, obviously it will change in a speed event as quick as everything happens. But you're able to use more of that posterior chain, keep your center of gravity back and up a little bit, extend that line from your shoulder to your pelvis, use your glutes, as we've talked about on this podcast, that are a very powerful set of muscles, and being able to take that hit coming out of the box a little differently. So, in regular riding and people who are novice riders, it's very evident when they're putting their toes down because they are forward, right? You see them a little bit forward in the saddle, which allows them to hang on their horse's head, which allows the horse to get upset about that and can cause some issues, especially with a novice rider. So, does that make sense? Do you kind of see what I'm talking about there? Can you visualize the difference in a rider being on their anterior chain of muscles versus their posterior kinetic chain? And so it really kind of depends on your body, how you were brought up riding. If we're talking about the differences in foot position in the rope pen versus other disciplines, other events, as those are a lot more standard agreement on the basics of riding. But it can change. Your ankle is pretty pivotal in how muscles are recruited. So it's kind of the linchpin of what turns on which muscles. Which riding in the ankle can cause a stiff ankle, okay? The ankle is made up of the calcaneus and the talus. The calcaneus is your heel bone, and the talus is kind of a square bone that sits on top of that heel bone, and it's covered by your tibia and your fibula, which are your two leg bones. So your talus is kind of housed, it's kind of closed off. And the ankle joint can get stiff as we are in dorsiflexion for extended periods. It can get stiff no matter what position you're in, if you are in a position for an extended period of time. So it can get stiff. It can get kind of where it's not moving through its motion right there. So some good general ankle mobility exercises can help you far as maybe doing some circles either direction, both directions, writing your ABCs in the air with your foot. Doesn't matter whether you do upper or lowercase ABCs or print or cursive, just as long as you're moving through those motions. Will keep some mobility going, because if you get stiff at the ankles, just like we've spent this podcast talking about the differences in muscle recruitment in your riding, it will do the same thing with your gait and walking. And so if you don't address that, of all the time you spend walking, because as much as we love riding our horses, we'll be honest with that's probably the least amount of time we get to spend with our horses, as other chores are needed. It can just create this snowball effect of the stiff ankle. And as I already said, it's kind of a linchpin of things. And so then muscle recruitment changes slightly, even when we're just walking. And it just can kind of keep going, and you don't notice it. Gosh, you may not notice it for years, because you're like, Farrells, I don't have ankle pain. I mean, because stiff ankles become your normal. And when something becomes our normal, then that's the worldview we see it out of. So that may happen over years and years, and then it doesn't show up until later, when we have a very ingrained riding pattern that is not serving us well, or it can come into chronic pain somewhere else, or if we're talking 40, 50 years down the road, it may show up as extreme wear and tear on a different joint, whether our knees or our hips. So everything always works together, and details matter. Gosh, those dang details, they matter. Additionally, your ankle control in the saddle and the stirrup can be the reason why you do or do not lose your stirrups. It is common practice in some circles of the barrel arena, the speed events, to rubber band stirrups, feet into stirrups. And I have seen a lot of wrecks happen with stirrups that didn't break. So whether you choose to rubber band or not, that is definitely a personal choice. But it may be just working on your riding will cause you to not lose your stirrups as much, and then you don't have to use rubber bands and so on and so forth. So just kind of food for thought. So today I just wanted to kind of show you the different things that happen from our heels down position. And it can change a lot of things. It can change how forward you are in the saddle versus being in correct alignment. It can change how your muscles are recruited and used, and it can be a safety issue several different ways. So I hope this maybe opened your eyes to thinking about your riding and what's working and not working for you, and maybe it'll give you some food for thought on minor adjustments you may need to do, or it may just have hopefully today helped you just understand some things more, which is always my goal here at Rider's Edge Podcast. So I hope you enjoyed today's chat. I hope we ankled you this, Batman, and explained the ankle and riding a little bit better. If you have questions about your riding, you can always log on to ridersedgetherapy.com. And there are places to put in your information for a consult, and we can go from there to help you with your riding goals. So I hope you enjoyed today's chat, and as always, I will see you down the road. Thank you for listening to the Rider's Edge podcast today. We appreciate your time and attention. Thank you for always helping us move the conversation forward. If you liked today's podcast, please help us keep the conversations going by subscribing to this podcast, and consider leaving us a review so others can find us and join in on the conversations. You can also find more information by checking us out on our social media channels, including Facebook at Rider's Edge Therapy and Wellness, Instagram at Rider's Edge Therapy, and our website, www.ridersedgetherapy.com. It is there that you can book a consult for either you or your horse. Thank you, and as always, we will see you down the road.